Welcome, people, to this episode of the Visionary Experience. We have very special guests with us from the great state of Arizona. All right, these are my first guests from outside the DC metro area. So I'm very excited to have Zachary and Ashley Wain of Wain Capital. Welcome. How are you two doing today?
So good.
Yeah, we're doing fantastic.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. No, absolutely. You both look good. You sound good. I'm sure your mortgages are good. we're definitely gonna dig in. If I were a first-time home buyer in Arizona, Colorado, or California, right? Is that where you guys are?
Yeah.
Correct.
I would come to you first. Why? Because brokers are better. Brokers are better. So Wain Capital. First of all, I love the name of your company. It really allows you to do a lot. It doesn't kind of put you into a corner. So can you tell me how you came up? How long has Wain Capital been around, and how did you come up with the name?
Yeah, so that was challenging because that took us a couple months to really come up with a name. That was at least a challenge for me. So after being a loan officer working for one company really my whole career, about 2 years ago, decided, hey, it was time to branch out, take on a whole other level of business entrepreneurship. I wanted more from what I was doing, so it was time to start Wain Capital just from being a loan officer. And that was about 2 years ago. I think we actually incorporated 2 years ago within a couple of days. And for me, name, whether it's name brand or just the transfer of being a loan officer to this is now my company, was an important step. And we sought a lot of opinions for it. Talked to a lot of people, whether in the mortgage business, outside, and marketing, and I did not like it. I did not like my name, our name, boom, right there. And other people in marketing had to sell us on that. They had to sell us that it would be such a great transfer that if we named it, Prestige Mortgage, no one would know us. But with Wain Capital, it's just that instant recognition of people we've done business with for years and years. So it grew on us, and yeah, once we realized how powerful that was, it just became the obvious choice.
And just to summarize, I came up with the name. He didn't like it, so he went to a bunch of opinions. They said yes, it was great. So that's where it came from.
Pretty standard.
No, that's fantastic. So now you said, exactly, so you had been working for another company, right? Or other companies before that?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And great. And Ashley, what were you doing beforehand?
It's kind of funny. I've been in many different industries, but always in a business development role, always in a marketing role, and doing everything from I was in healthcare for a while, just different avenues, but always a huge supporter and cheerleader for Zach in regards to his business and what he was doing. And so it was interesting because we found in the company that he was with, which he was with for 13 years, awesome people, really good guys. It was a great bunch that all worked together. But I would go in and I'm used to calling on businesses and calling on offices and going around cold calling and knocking on doors, and none of them ever did that. And so it was a very interesting perspective for me to say, well, how are you getting your leads? How are you building these relationships? What is it that you're doing? So I was always trying to be a big push on building these relationships, knocking on the doors and getting out of his comfort zone from being behind a desk and the phone.
Yeah, I mean, that was a big change to what our previous business model was, the company that I worked for 13 years. And we used to come up on Lending Tree leads, and you get your leads in the morning and you work them and you hit the phones. And, as a loan guy, you're crunching numbers and you're on the phones. But Ashley has always been the marketer. Even when she's had other jobs, she always marketed me more than I was marketing myself.
Right.
So we really needed that fresh ideas and realized it wasn't happening there. And I love my old company, awesome people, but we just wanted to do something different. So it all just kind of just flowed naturally.
No, that's great. And so when you were starting, and becoming a broker, what were some of the challenges that you had both run into, really getting everything going and really getting whether it was a walking or running start? Like, so, what did you guys do to overcome that?
Yeah, there were a handful of obstacles. One is just fear of the unknown and jumping out from being an employee and having structure and jumping into it yourself. But as a broker, as you know, there's a lot of licensure items you have to go through. Depending on the state, there's certain net worth requirements you have to have. So, those were definitely some obstacles, but we had ways to overcome them. And really was just fear of the unknown and going out and doing it yourself. And that was exciting. I think fear can be a good thing. You just have to know how to corral it the right way. But at that time as well, November, December, January, about 2 years ago, it's not like interest rates were low and business was booming at that time either. But I just felt it was the right time to make the step and just go. There was enough waiting. I wish I did it years ago. So it was just, now's the time.
But what a tremendous learning curve that it really was to go from being an employee where the bosses do the state licensing, the compliance, the audits, the going through all of that piece. And so for me, somebody who is not in the mortgage world and quite frankly had never had any interest in ever being in the mortgage world, it was, for me, I was like, well, let's get licensed in every state. Let's do all the states and oh my gosh, the minute you dive into it and what it requires and how much you have to do and the CEs and then the reports and so that was an interesting learning curve, and we're happy with our 3 states and hope to not add more.
So you're good right now with 3 states.
Good for right now, that's for sure. Yeah.
Well, I had another question for you, but let me at least ask you a little bit about that, because here where we are, I don't know if you've really been around the DC metro area. It's a lot of people and it's fairly compact, but you're talking about now, do you do mostly Southern California? Is that where most of your business is, or?
For California, I'd say the majority of it is Southern California, but there's still a decent amount in the Bay Area as well. So we are very spread apart as far as, it's a little different than East Coast and especially Colorado and here as well. There's different markets and pockets and all sorts of different things to consider geographically for sure.
Mm-hmm. Right. So what I was going to say is that you have, Arizona's a big state. California is a huge state. Colorado's big. So, I guess during COVID it's not as bad because everything is really more, electronic. But how's it been in terms of actually doing a decent amount of business outside of your home state? Like, how has it been for you to be able to specifically build relationships that will help you to bring in, deals that close and everything?
That's such a good question. And that was a big part where we had a nice advantage because Zach has been in the business for so long and he's been licensed in these 3 states for so long. He did have quite a following, right? So he did gain a lot of people who really enjoyed working with him. So when we started Wain Capital, it wasn't like we were opening a brand new state, never been there, meet the first person. So,
right.
I will always say that is a huge piece for us. However, absolutely. And it is a hard thing to really want to get out there and build the relationships. And so when I started with the company, which was about October of last year, I started getting on a plane and I was going and traveling out there and setting up appointments with our realtors and advisors and, everybody that we could to try to nourish those relationships and show them that we care and jump on a plane to go to an open house for a weekend and things like that, just to try to do whatever we could. And thankfully, Arizona to California and Colorado, it's pretty inexpensive. So it's not that big of a deal, but it made it fun and it opens up our eyes to what their environment is, especially with our realtor partners and what they're going through. But that it did create somewhat of a challenge. However, because his business was so behind the desk on the phone for 13 years prior, he wasn't used to going out and meeting them anyway. So he was able to build these relationships, a lot of the ones that he brought over with him over the phone. So that thankfully was very helpful starting this company. But then, pre-COVID, we were traveling quite a bit and going out and trying to build more relationships and the rapport and face-to-face. But post-COVID, no.
Not as much. And so, let's talk about that for a minute. So, you started a year ago, right? And Zach had started the company 2 years ago. So How's it been now? Do you feel that you've been able to establish a decent amount of relationships in that first really 2 years? Really, one you by yourself, Zach, the other one with Ashley together. Has that helped to sustain you coming into COVID, since really COVID started hitting us in March of this year? Like, what have you been doing to cultivate and maintain those relationships that you've built? And have you been able to, build any new ones, during this time?
It's definitely an interesting life cycle with all of this as far as new client acquisition. Like Ashley said, there were plenty of clients and referral partners from before who, when I started the company, which is, to me, was instrumental just off the bat, and meant that there was some business. And then in my first 6 months, there wasn't a ton of new client acquisition. I was trying my best, but starting a new business, I was doing it by myself. Ashley was trying to help at the time, but she wasn't full-time yet. She was in her other field. And then, so the ramp up period, things were going well, but it was a slow and steady climb. When Ashley came on before COVID, it was a nice 5-6 month window where she was getting on planes, we were getting on planes, we were traveling all over, and there was a really solid amount of growth from new referral partners, new clients. And it was fantastic. Then COVID hits, and that just stopped, like she said. Now, I mean, in our business, rates drop, so that's a good thing. So there's still refinances to be done, and saving people lots of money, and that's all wonderful things.
Right.
But as far as going out and reaching new people, that has been more difficult. So it has been interesting. There are some ways to get creative, where, for example, we realtors will send mailers on what's selling in your neighborhood. We'll get one of those. We'll happen to hop online and check out what listings they have and run appraisal waivers on them and send them something. Hey, did you know this home gets an? So there's ways to try to connect to people when it's not face to face. It's definitely not as impactful, but there have been some creative ways to try and reach out, to get them on the phone, to do a social distance coffee meetup, if everything is allowable at the time.
I'll jump in a little bit.
Absolutely.
One of the things that we pushed on our team, and we both agreed on immediately, was more so about giving before receiving. So we come from a mentality. I don't know if you've ever heard of Personal Success Institute, so the PSI seminars. Zach and I actually did one of those right when you had started the company, actually. And one of the things they talk about is there's 4 different personality traits, and you can be from a win-win, win-lose, lose-lose, lose-win. And we really knew that we wanted to operate from this win-win perspective. And when it comes to realtors, and as you know, and every other mortgage guy knows, when you call on realtors and they don't know you, what's the first thing? First out the gate, they're annoyed, right? They sound like they can't be bothered. They don't want to talk to you. They're like, yeah, right? And one of the things that I learned very quickly when I finally was just trying to figure out, why do they act like this every time you call? What's happening? Why don't you like to call them, right? And so I was asking them questions. Why are you annoyed by this? Well, it was always the same thing. Well, mortgage people never give us referrals. We give mortgage people referrals. They don't ever give us referrals. So I was like, that's interesting. Okay. So with Zach having such a huge following already, part of my question to him was, if these people are coming to you because they want to talk to you first about buying a home, what if they don't have a realtor? What can we do? What are some things that we can do to implement a new system to ask qualifying questions? So we found that the minute that we would really go through and our intro call with them and find out what their goals are, what they want, what they like, we were asking, do you have a realtor? Do you like your realtor? Is it your neighbor down the street? Or is this somebody that you really know is really great? And we're going to kind of push a little bit so that they don't like them or something, then we have a referral we can hand out. Same thing with tax returns and their financials and things like that. If we notice that their money's not being managed as well, he tries to go a step further and really ask some of those questions. So now we can find out, do you not have a financial advisor? Hey, how about we hook you up with our financial advisor person? So the minute, especially, of course, we were trying to get referrals all the time. We always are. But we realized, especially with COVID, but you can't go and try to get, and you really need to slow down almost and really figure out what does everybody want and what does everybody need and where are their pain points. And so when we figured out that that was one of them, we started trying to hand out in an order of referrals that we could. We found that this year alone, we've handed out more referrals than you've probably handed out in the last 10 years, like just
That's amazing.
Really good amount of, and so now there's this sense of loyalty and there's this, they know that we're doing what we can. And when they, not great with social media, but if they do a post on an open house or if they're doing something, I want to share it. I want to push it. I want to comment. I'm, just really trying to do what I can since we're not going to be face to face as much. And, but dropping in and sending them plants to their office, or we sent lunch to, ordered a DoorDash and sent lunch over, and things that are distant, but they still know that we care and we want to help.
No, that's amazing. So it really comes down to how you two are really good at adding value. I read a lot of motivational business entrepreneurial books and, look at a lot of podcasts and videos and stuff like that. And when you're able to, it is more blessed to give than it is to receive. And so it really seems like you both are getting a lot of the fruit from that, and good for you, for sure. I'm encouraged by that, because I was sitting here writing some notes like, all right, how can I start to give more to my clients? But again, that's how we help each other, because
Absolutely.
The more people that we can help, whether it's, purchase a home, or to, like you had said, Ashley, to manage their finances, or at least, maybe help to point them in the right direction, see if they're even open to that. That's something that a lot of individuals in the mortgage industry just do not do, because they're very one-track minded. Okay, let me just get you from A to B, get you out the door from A to B. And, they may claim that they're relationship oriented, but they're not.
Right.
They're more transactionally coordinated, right, and focused. And when you are, I've talked to a lot of people about this, and I really try to not be a hypocrite and do this in my own life. I'm like, okay, if I can focus on doing what's right and doing it the best that I can, then the money will come, the transactions will come, and I have to really firmly believe that, because if I don't, and we end up getting focused on the wrong things, at some point it's going to spiral out. And I think at some point people see past the Swiss cheese, and I'm using a nice term, they see past everything, and it's like, and they see you for who you really are, and you're not able to build the amount of trust, that you should, like people are doing with Wain Capital. So that's definitely kudos to both of you. Now, is it just the two of you, or do you have anyone else on your team?
What's our total? We have 7 people now.
We do, but what's interesting, what's a little different, is Zach is still the only licensed loan officer.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of do things a little bit differently, and only from this perspective of everyone that works here is not from the mortgage world.
Okay.
So yeah, he loves that. But what we really wanted to do, which so he is very good at always being prepared with the financials, but also you understand how it works in this industry. You're really, really busy, and then rates skyrocket, and now your pipeline's dead, right? And so he came from that world and rode through the 2008 and and going through everything with that, where he's always kind of cautious, very cautious on, we started the business out of our home. It was just him. There was nobody on payroll, and so what I realized though very quickly was that if we're going to do more volume, and so many of these people want Zach Wain, they want Zach Wain to look at their stuff. They don't want somebody else. Well, then we need some support. So from my industry, that my most recent one, which was healthcare, this wonderful woman, her name is Sharon, but she ran the mobile doctor practice. Mm-hmm. She has everything you can't teach, right? Mm. You can teach mortgages, but you can't teach the loyalty, dedication, like her eagerness, her management skills, positive attitude, like everything she carried with her. We knew, and especially as being a married couple, like I don't want to be in the loan world and he doesn't want to be in the marketing world. So we need to be in our own lane, but you need help. And I'm not coming over on that side because we'll be divorced in no time. So we needed to find somebody that could be his work wife or his right hand and all that good stuff. And so Sharon, not from mortgages, she's our director of operations. And then we needed a processor. So a very good friend of mine who his niece just graduated from college with, I think, from botany.
Yeah.
Like she's a total, like, loves plants. She's
Yeah.
playing in the forest with bees, doing research or something. I don't know. But just an incredible old school worker. Totally not, she has the drive. She has everything, again, that you can't teach. And so, all right, well, let's see how she does with processing. So brought her in as part-time. She's killing it. She's so great. So full-time, here she is. So now, we have an LOA, and then we have an administrative assistant. And so, little pieces here and there, but, of course, we want people from the mortgage industry. Of course, we want somebody who has this, but we like to think that we do things a little bit differently. Okay. We are not transactional, and we very much are from an advisory perspective. So to bring in somebody from the mortgage world, we got to make sure that they don't have bad habits, right? That they don't have the things that now we got to change that mindset in addition to teaching them our world. So far we have, the 4 employees that aren't from the mortgage world, but have the really good qualities. And he's been doing a really good job teaching everybody these things. So we're always looking, we love to add more people on, but it's got to be the right fit. Really, we're pretty picky.
Yeah. And to jump on that, I have been learning and will continue to learn, but the right person is more important than finding someone who you've never met, interviewed.
Absolutely.
And finding the right person who can be taught these skills if they are that great worker, if they're loyal, if they fit with your company culture, super important. So we've been lucky to find that, and that has been tremendous. And also, just to double down on what you said before, again, still trying to just continuously learn this. And it's so hard in our industry when things can change at the drop of a hat, for better or worse. But when we went to United Wholesale Mortgage, their success track training, the broker owner course where we met, Matt Ishbia's big pitch was that sales cannot exceed operations. You have to be ready operationally with your support.
Yes.
And it's hard to do, especially for a small company, I think, because things can pivot so quickly. But if rates go down and now we're so busy, we can't answer the phone, we can't call you back, we can't answer now because sales outpaced our capacity to handle it, that looks really bad for everyone involved. So we have been doing our best to have our support staff ready and to be there so that along the way, we're giving everyone great service, the client, the realtor, the financial advisor, keeping everyone posted, just really staying on top of it's been important for us.
No, I mean, we're on the same page. This is awesome. I mean, so you just mentioned, Zachary, you just talked about capacity. And that's something that we've been working on here at Visionary Lending for the past, 6-7 months, looking to grow and expand and have that capacity because, right, you have to be ready during COVID and you have to be ready post-COVID, period. And, as far as I'm concerned, the name of the game in our business is speed. Like if we're able to get things done quickly, now naturally the service has to be something that is indoctrinated and ingrained in us. Now we have to be able to give and to connect with people. And so I'm not going to hire someone that doesn't fit within our culture. And, you touched upon that because you can have the best person on paper, but then you can have the right person. And then who are you going to choose? You need to choose the right person. Now, you're not going to find out if it's the right person until you're kind of in it, right? Like you kind of mentioned marriage. You don't know anything about marriage until you're married. So you got to figure it out. But the right person will be a part of that culture. And when you create a culture that you two have, a culture of work ethic, a culture of giving and servitude, a culture that's focused, then everything else can come along because absolutely you can teach certain skills, for sure. And Ashley, you reminded me of something that is very prevalent to me right now because you use the word advocate. I actually use the word advisory. There's a podcast that I follow by a man named Donald Miller. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but it's called the Story Brand Podcast. And so as a part of the Story Brand podcast, he helps marketers to market their companies according to a story. And he said in any Hollywood script, in any, worthwhile story, you're going to have 3 components to it. You're going to have 3 characters or 3 aspects. The first is going to be the hero. you have the hero of the story, then you have the villain, you have the adversary, but then you have the guide, you have the Yoda, you know, you have the person that is guiding you through the story who's really separate essentially from the hero and, you know, the villain. And I'm really trying to continue to evolve my company to be a guide for people, because when they purchase that home and they're moving from that apartment, maybe in that area where they don't want to live, or they're increasing the size because they're building upon their family, or maybe they're having a family member come live with them. They're the hero. They're the ones who are going to live there, build a family legacy, build family memories. They're the hero, and we're the guide guiding them along. And really, the villain per se is any type of challenge, any type of discouragement, any type of doubt that they have. We help them and educate them and get and guide them through that to make sure that they know that we're on their side, holding their hand from start to finish. We want a picture at the end. We want a testimonial, but you know, we're their guide. And I really appreciate the fact that you mentioned advisory, because people do need that advice.
Really do. And you know what? It was funny because Zach and I have been together for a very long time, and he's been in mortgages the entire time. And I only these last 3 years have started to learn about mortgages, because I found it to be boring. I found it to be so confusing. I found it to be incredibly intimidating. I just didn't want to deal with it. So one of the big things that when we kind of joined up, and I wanted to send this message out that's like, it doesn't need to be intimidating. And it doesn't mean that mortgage brokers or loan officers are these like geniuses and you know nothing and we know everything and we're going to make it confusing. Like, so that was a big part on why we kind of started trying to do some funny videos, or just doing some like basic ones. We have some funny ones of him coming out of like our daughter's playhouse and stuff like that, and like refinancing that home, and trying to really get people to realize, like, call us with anything. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it is. Even if you're looking in 2 years and you know your credit, you know, isn't very good, well, let's talk about it. Let's figure out, let's get you on the right path. Or if, you know, you really have no idea where to even start, or, you know, what documents and things like that. Like, we really just want to make it not intimidating and not boring, and make it more fun, and make it not so much about the numbers and your credit and what you can afford, but more about like, what are your goals? What do you want? Do you want to pay off your home in 20 years? Do you have 3 kids you got to send to college? Like, what is it that your goals are? So then we can figure out how to, you know, tailor the right program and package for you. And then once you are done and we are signed, sealed, and delivered, I want you to call me when you get your first statement, when you're confused, or they sell your loan but you don't understand. Like, I want you to feel comfortable to call us and be like, what am I supposed to do? What do I do again? No problem, I got you. So it's kind of, we really want to try to bring the stigma down, I guess, if that makes sense. It's really trying to make it more fun and you know, and really getting to know each other. And yeah, our clients become our family.
No, absolutely. And it sounds like you connect, you know, you really connect. And so, okay. So let me give you a scenario, right? This is not written down. This is off the cuff. All right. So, you know, got a new administration coming in, and all of a sudden, you know, like coming into December, something happens with the economy and rates go down to like in the ones, at the mid to high ones, 30-year fixed. Okay. Not just VA and FHA and all this stuff. I mean, just across the board, something happens. I'm just making this up. Now, all of a sudden, Wain Capital has like 3 times the amount of potential business referrals, people calling and everything. What are some of the best practices, and what are some of the you know, the processes that you have in place so that you can handle increased people coming in, increased calls, increased referrals? How would you handle that? Now, again, I'm not talking about hundreds and hundreds, but let's just say it's, you know, double or triple what you're used to. How would you go ahead and handle that?
Interesting that you say that scenario. And I think what's nice is, in essence, that's kind of what did happen with us, right?
Okay.
So we're used to doing the, you know, 9, 10, something like that. And then our goal was 16. And then all of a sudden we jumped up to 26 and 29. And again, he's the only LO. So figuring out what those processes were that were going to come into place. Obviously, of course, if that even doubles from there, what would we do? So
and I think we kind of had the influx, doubling, tripling of calls when COVID hit initially.
Okay.
And rates were still great before then, but when COVID hit, people who were former clients referred to us a seventh step referral because rates are so low and it's advertising, hey, I heard the Federal Reserve made rate 0, so can I get a 0% loan? And just the amount of calls we had, and there were plenty of people who were like, no, you have a great deal now, let's wait it out, just let's see what happens. You have 3.25 now or whatever, like let's hold on. But the amount of trying to manage the phones at that time was very difficult because our staff was much lighter than it is now. So I think part of what we've done to be ready is having our support staff ramped up and ready. Now, to what you're saying, if that really did happen, whether it's overnight or in a couple of weeks, the traffic would be a lot. And the last thing we ever want to do is leave someone behind, not respond in a timely fashion. Right. I think one important thing in those events to where if it is just 3 times the amount of calls overnight, I mean, we can't hire people fast enough to respond in the way that I want to. However, one, I think setting expectations in those intense moments is important. Yes. And even if it's answering the phone, getting the quick information, absolutely. Thank you so much for calling. We definitely want to help you. However, I just want to let you know things are incredibly busy at the moment. It'll be 24 to 48 hours. We're doing our very best. We'll catch up. And we do have support staff that will help us do so. If that did happen, we would have to look pretty quickly to add support staff. I think the challenge in our business is, well, everyone's so busy already. Can you get someone who has experience and who can help immediately? And if you can't, you have to bring in that right person that you try to find and help them, maybe find them and train them. So it's not, I don't think it's being truthful to say just overnight, I'm going to hire 2 more people and they're going to jump in and it's going to be great, because that may not be realistic. So I think having good support staff and solid operations to start allows you to handle that influx of calls and volume. And then also setting expectations with clients, doing your very best and letting them know, absolutely, you answer your phone. We will get back to you in X amount of time frame. Please give us a little bit of allowance on this because rates dropped X%. I think things like that are pretty important.
One of the systems that we put in place that was helpful for us, and maybe other places already do this, but grab one of those, is we created this like lead sheet in essence. So then it's kind of a silly little thing and I can always send it over, but it just gathering all the information and the scenario, because you don't have to be licensed to do this part, right? Like if I'm going to send you pricing, we got to be licensed. That's this guy. Like, and so figuring out how to, instead of him being this bottleneck of how we are going to do this, and any loan, even if you have 2 or 3, and let's say that that's just that many more calls coming in, is okay, well, who can do what and how can we be all hands on deck?
Right.
And so, and that was this big thing with filling out these, lead sheets with their current loan terms, what their goals are, how much they owe on their home, and all of this stuff. Not only did it help gather enough information so that when he did call them back, he already knew what he was going into. So that shortens your call by, this amount, but also help kind of train our staff to really know what to look for, what to ask. And instead of just being admin or instead of just being a processor and things like that, you're now talking to the client, you're building that rapport, you're getting to know their villain, you're getting to know what is so frustrating for them. And so then that way, by the time we hand it over, he calls them, we're already ready to go with pricing. So it's, it's a matter of putting these systems in place to, try to mitigate the craziness and setting those expectations. You're absolutely right, because before we would be within 12 hours, we're getting back to you, we hit at 1.48 hours. And it's like, I promise I'm there, we're on it. Here's what we're doing. Here's what, why we're doing all this. So it's interesting, especially as a broker, getting to know all the different lender systems, right? I mean,
I know.
Everybody that you use, everybody has a new turn times. Everybody's
overlays are different here and there, and you got to find that puzzle. But allowing allowing the rest of our support staff to have more ownership of
Yes.
the situation, being able to step up when 3 or 4 of us are all on the phone at the same time and have this lease. Yeah, that was a crucial step.
And then to be able to ask the qualifying questions if they have gone into forbearance, right? And things like that, because how many people, and I'm sure you saw it and every other mortgage person saw it, how many people opted for forbearance because that's a free money. You mean I don't have to pay my mortgage? Oh, now I want to refi. Sorry. And so we were able to go through so many of these and okay, well, they went into forbearance. So I knew the conversation to have. So it didn't need to go to him for him to have that conversation. I can explain to them they need to get caught up. Here's what I need you to do. And then we even started doing videos. I'm like, don't do forbearance, please.
Right.
Do it.
I'm going to look at some of those. Yes. Let me tell you.
Because then we realized what we needed to educate people on because they had no idea. And people are blowing up our phones because, the news is saying 0%. Go into forbearance. You called your bank to inquire. They put you into forbearance without you even asking for it. So that helped mitigate a lot of this influx that could have potentially have altered our service. But it wasn't all hands on deck. And one of my favorite things is building relationships with these people. So the more I could, get to know their issues, a lot of the times I could handle it before it needed to all funnel through the pricing license guy.
No, absolutely. And, I'm glad you guys did videos because I'm going to, jump on the soapbox about the forbearance because people just did not realize, what effect that would have. In fact, I lost a deal very recently within the last couple of weeks. I had a client that I'm helping refinance. I helped them purchase their home almost 2 years ago. We did a 203K, redid the kitchen and hardwood floors and all this nice stuff. I'm like, all right, rate was high, time to refinance. Well, one of the co-borrowers had co-signed with her daughter. Okay. Non-occupant co-sign, had done it a long time ago. The daughter, decided to go into forbearance and do the CARES Act in May, and it's over in December. And I gathered all the necessary documentation to show that the daughter made the payments, but I called 2 different places. I already had it placed and almost clear to close. And the underwriter said, no, we have to show 12 consistent payments up to the present.
Wow.
And so I said, well, wait a minute. How's that going to be if she hasn't paid her mortgage from May up, to November, December? I said, that's not going to happen. I called 2 other places. They said the exact same thing. So the only way that would work is if she came off that mortgage completely. And that's a whole nother conversation. But the thing is, the amount of risk that is perceived by lenders when someone goes into forbearance is, it's, you can have an opinion on it. You can argue it one way or the other, but nonetheless, it definitely caused a lot of issues. I know for me, and I'm sure for a lot of loan officers and us in the mortgage industry, even though in one sense it was, good. I got offered to go into forbearance. I still have some student loans left. And I was like, nope. Yeah. I was like, why should I go into student loan? And why should I do that if I don't need to? Why am I going to defer that principal for somewhere down and punt it down the road? That's not going to happen. I'm going to continue to make my payments. And so, but not everyone has that same type of mindset. And maybe not everyone, maybe some people actually need that money for various reasons, but nonetheless, we're in that position right now. So it's good that you're asking those types of questions, which leads me to my next question for you as we begin to, to end off here pretty soon. What's your outlook? We're pretty much almost here at the end of 2020. So, Zach and I had a good conversation, last night with regards to inventory and the lack thereof and all the issues that buyers are having. But what's your outlook in terms of the housing industry, let's say over the next, 4 to 6 months as we finish off this year and as we begin to look at spring 2021?
Yeah, so to like you said, just jump off the conversation we had last night and the lack of inventory in the states we're licensed in, again, California, Arizona, Colorado. And you mentioned similar things in your states. Right. It is difficult for buyers to find a home. It is 10, 15 offers, 10, 15 buyers per property. Even from low to modest to higher price ranges, the inventory is light and there's competition. Right. And we have noticed, and I was reaching out to some colleagues of mine who run some other companies here in the mortgage biz and just talking to them, the last few months we've had X amount of purchases to refinance. Here's our ratios. Just curious what you guys are doing. And and they all kind of express the same thing, that we're all seeing a lot of buyer fatigue. Sure, people can still get under contract. We have some purchases, but there's a lot of people who it's tough, and they're working full time, and maybe they got kids, and you see a home online and it's gone the next day, and you make an offer and you're outbid. So we are most definitely seeing that, and it will be interesting to see the next 4 to 6 months, even as my opinion, even as positive vaccine news comes out. I can't imagine things are distributed in such a timely fashion that the people who are sitting on the fence because of COVID and they don't want to sell their home, they don't want people inside, or maybe they lost their job and so they don't want to sell their home and buy a new home. It seems like there's a lot of people who will still be on the fence about selling, and I think inventory is going to be very tough. I think buyers, you can get under contract and you can do it if you really want to, but it is difficult. It is. And specifically, I can talk about our markets more so than yours, obviously.
Sure.
In Phoenix, in Arizona, we're experiencing tremendous population growth, and it is expected to continue into the next 5-10 years. And we can't build homes fast enough. So we already have a supply and demand issue here. So even past 4 or 6 months, it'll be super interesting to see what happens with our foreclosures stalled out for longer, or do they start coming down in 6, 12, 18 months? Will that do anything for inventory here? I don't think so. I think the housing market, if you're a homeowner, is great here. I think your value is going to steadily rise for the immediate future, but it really is a challenge. So I think that's where, and I'm sure you help your buyers in the same thought process, but you got to be ready. When you see your home that you love, you have to aggressively go after it, because there's going to be other offers, and there's a bunch of tools that you and I have to maybe help make your offer look a little bit better than other people, closing fast, appraisal waivers, things like that. But it's at least a conversation that I'm having with buyers is you can get under contract, but it's difficult. So just be ready for it, and what you're getting into, and just be prepared, and you can do it.
And one of those pieces being that you are using a realtor who is in it for the same reasons.
100%.
Because I cannot tell you how many, and we're even getting calls, they're brand new realtors. Everybody wants to be a realtor right now, which sure, I do. Sounds great. But it's not that easy. If you get a listing, you're making money all day long. But what happens when you have buyers? And what happens when you're, some of these realtors, they're working other jobs as well, or they don't want to go show 12 homes in a day, or it's a lot of work and things like that.
They'd rather do a listing as opposed to
Of course they would.
And so I talk to some of our clients who are getting really frustrated. And I'm like, okay, give me more about your scenario. Tell me, okay, who's the realtor? And if they are great and they're working their tail off, then absolutely, then I'm going to back that realtor to our client all day long and remind our client, like, they are working their tail off for you. Like, it's just a tough market. But if I hear that the realtor hasn't taken them out to go look at homes, or nothing's popping up on their searches, and they're searching more than their realtor is, then I'm absolutely going to try to push to use one of our partners, because I know that our partners have the same mindset that we do. And we want to help. We want to help first. And then, and we are not transactional. They want a lifelong client. So we kind of do a little bit of pushback that way with the people who are getting frustrated in these markets of, well, do you need to change up your team a little bit? So sometimes that seems to help.
No, I agree with you 100%. So listen, you guys, I took a lot of notes. I feel like I was in the college auditorium sitting in the back, like, damn, great. No, this has been fantastic. And I'm going to be honest, this has been, a fantastic conversation. I really enjoyed it. So thank you both for your time.
Yeah,
so, hey, let's do the shameless plug. So go ahead. Can you share a little bit about your website, your videos? Like how can people get a hold of you?
That's awesome. Thank you. So
absolutely.
WainCapital.com, but we're Wain, W-A-I-N. And so Wain Capital, we're on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Zillow, LinkedIn, all those good places, Zach Wain. But we're in Arizona, California, and Colorado. Our office is in Scottsdale, and we try to make a fun place to work. And hey, we even have an emotional support animal. So if you're having a rough day, come on by. We'll give you a coffee or a beer, and you can pet the dog. So
I need some emotional support.
Yeah, right.
It's rough out here, dude. It's rough.
Oh yeah, you got to check out that video on our emotional support dog. So So it's
Right.
all fun stuff. You gotta keep smiling.
Absolutely. Well, Zach, Ashley, thank you so much. You all have added so much value. You've talked about being an advocate, being in an advisory role. You've talked about capacity. You've talked about how you help your clients. And really, I feel from this conversation that your clients, would not feel like they're on an assembly line, but they actually feel like you're hugging them, you're with them, you're holding their hands. And that's why you're successful. And that's why you're going to continue to be successful, because not only are you both very competent in what you're doing, and not only as brokers, you're able to offer, great deals, but, you're actually right there eye to eye, with your client. And that's what people really want and need, especially in these days. So thank you so much for your time. I look forward to us potentially doing this again, collaborating somehow. So I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us. You're wonderful.
Absolutely.
We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everyone, for looking at this episode of The Visionary Experience featuring the illustrious Wain Capital. Look forward to seeing everyone again. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.